example, even my dad would not know about, because like they were social actors, they lived a very simple life. So, but she actually did have like a great love for like silk sarees. So she had a lot of them. So, and she would invest in them, like koi baat nahi hai, expensive hai fir, because also like I mean, I am mixed, but she was Tamil, right? She was brought up in a Tamil household. So there were certain things that part of her identity also is something that I know, or I've figured out because of the things that she had, and through her sister she used to share this joy with.
Was there like a list of things that she wanted to get from somewhere and the sari written?
Those were sarees that she had bought for other people. Like those are the names of people that she
Right.
had bought sarees for. Like she had gone somewhere and gotten them sarees, I guess. So yeah. But really, I actually realized later when I showed the film to one of her friends who is in the list of names that are getting a sari, um, that in the diary, most the English notes are all her, but actually the Hindi wale notes, which are minutes of certain meetings that they had, those are actually not her handwriting. Those are that friend's handwriting, which is something that I didn't know. And when they saw the film, is when they told me, "Oh, this is actually my handwriting."
So you could have made a whole different movie about like tracing people who she gave saris to and like
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's like a fun
Yeah,
story.
there was yeah, I mean at some point I thought matlab, that kind of film also, I mean I don't know if I'll make a film, but yeah, of course my plan is eventually to meet as many people as she knew, who I mean also because like after she died, not all of her friends kept in touch, right? So some of them we have been in touch with, but some of them are not part of our life that much, but they were a big part of her life. So I mean, I do at some point want to go and ask them questions, but for this film, it wouldn't have been possible because we had like a really short span of time to finish it, which is also something that helps you decide the form of a film, how much time and investment do you have.
You did mention that your mother was not religious, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, why did you incorporate a religion there in your film? What was its purpose, or I don't like, what was its purpose basically?
Mm, because so I mean, I was brought up as Catholic because of her, because she was Catholic, and we were also baptized when we were kids, and then years afterwards, as long as my nanny was alive, we had to go to church, and every Sunday my father would force us because nani ne kaha tha. So but like I have a very conflicting relationship with religion itself. But when I was scripting the film, for example, I was basically listing things that I have in common with her, or things that have shaped who I am, which have come from her. So religion is one of those things, that this specific religion is part of my life because it was her religion, or the religion that she was brought up in, and therefore I was brought up in it. So which is why it's in the film also. But but I don't know. I think I was just. I mean, it's actually a much more obvious. Earlier drafts of the film had a more obvious sense of what I wanted to say, but it didn't fit the tone of the rest of the film. So now I mean, I'm not sure what comes. I myself am not sure what comes across when you look at it, the church wala part. But essentially, what I'm trying to say is that it's a bit bogus and hypocritical, because, for example, the Catholic Church uh, says that we are not supposed to believe in iconography and images and statues, but churches are filled with statues and with iconography and images and all of that. And what is that? But they are not living things. And you're not supposed to be, I mean, as a Christian, you're not supposed to be praising non living thing, but you do, because that's what your church is filled with. And also, there's this whole thing of, you know, in the Christian church, that we will serve the poor and we'll live a simple life, and priests have to take a vow of poverty and all of that. But there's also so much opulence in church, and there's actually so much wealth and accumulation of, power and stuff. And historically, the Catholic Church has been on the wrong side of history for most of history, and even now, to a certain extent, it continues to be on the wrong side of history. So, I mean, I was just trying to say that, this is the religion that I have inherited from you, but also that I don't really like it. But which, and the thing is that with her, like what her relationship with religion was is something that I'm still like a bit not sure about, because when we were kids, we were told that she was religious and she wanted you to be Catholic and she wanted you to be baptized. So that's why you are being brought up in this faith. But like her friend has told us, like other friends have told us that no, she was not actually very religious, but there are just some compromises you make for family. So that's what she did. There are also other versions we've gotten where, um, let's say she wasn't very religious, but 3 or 4 years before we were born, she had a miscarriage and stuff, and she always really wanted kids. Like she very much wanted kids, and they weren't sure whether she would ever be able to conceive and whether we would be born. So apparently, she did become slightly religious at that point. But who knows? Like I don't know what her relationship with religion was. So, but in the film is actually that sense. I mean, because it is also a letter. It is more about me trying to tell her certain things than about who she was. It's not in that sense a biopic as such, as in it's not about her. It's more about like I'm just telling her that this is what I feel about these things, which are, which connect us in a way.
I really want you to reflect upon that last instance, where you were guiding your mother towards home, right?
Yeah.
Take left, take right. So, like, is it also a part of that, your spiritual beliefs, Catholic beliefs, or it's just something else?
No, not really. I mean, it's not my obviously like Catholics don't believe that people come back. They just believe that everybody dies and then you go to heaven, and then eventually, if everybody's in heaven, you meet them there or not. But I think so. The film was a letter, right? And for making the film, I was actually writing a lot of letters, like what are the things that I want to say, and I was writing so many things. But that's the thing that I was connected to what I was saying about grief earlier, that you process it very differently. And and I realized that when I was writing those letters, there were parts of those letters which I was writing as a 28-year-old, but there were parts of it that were being written as what I would have thought at the age of 5, or at the age of 3, or at the age of 6, because all of those conversations didn't happen, right? Like your conversations with your parents change as you age. So with my dad also, it has changed how we talk now and how we related to each other when we were kids. And that's also something that I was trying to say in the film, that um when somebody dies, your relationship with them kind of, in a way, it ends, because now you can't have those conversations anymore, you know but the fact that you keep growing as a person in any case, as long as you're alive, so the conversation in that sense does change, as in like, because when I as in because of the Christian faith, when I was born, I would go to heaven. So because that's what I was told. So I would have conversations with her all the time, ever since I was a kid. Like the earliest letter I wrote, which is just scribble scribble, was my father had scolded me and or whatever, and we were writing to our mother to complain. So since I had always had those conversations with her, this is the first film that I'm writing, right? So all of those letters were also coming into it. What were the things that I was saying to her as a kid? So that was why it's there, because I was trying to say that, this is not just 28-year-old, or actually when I was making the film, I was 26 or 25. This is not just that age Wali Grace who's writing the letter, but also the younger Graces and all the other Graces that have been, who is writing that
That
letter.
was the most beautiful part, I would say.
Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, I think one of the most effective things about the movie was this dialogue. There's a particular dialogue that stated, "Suddenly, every woman I ever loved became you." There was a dialogue. So, is there like a common attribute in all of these women, which you as a narrator, or like, is there's something common in all of these women that you seek or that you look up to? And because you mentioned that I don't only know how to become a woman, so is there
Mm.
something that you're trying to find in them that can help you, or
Yeah,
is it, yeah.
yeah, yeah. In the sense that, like being a woman in the world is a very specific experience, which is obviously different from how it feels to be a man. And my father, with all his good intentions and all his good politics, he can sympathize and he can try to help, but he doesn't know what that experience is like, right? So those were those are also questions that I would have asked her, like, which is also like when I was growing up. And I mean, I grew up in Delhi, and I mean, of course, if you've grown up in Delhi, everybody has been sexually assaulted, and everybody has been, the recipient of unwanted advances on the streets or whatever. And those were things that I can tell my dad about, and he can sympathize or whatever. But he can't really tell me what to do with that experience, in the sense that how should I respond to it? Not in the immediate sense, but in the way that I conduct my life. Like when I came to college, and I also studied literature, by the way, guys, in Miranda House. So when I was studying, I came, like when you're studying feminism, etc., that helped me so much, because I was like, okay, this is how I can process things. And we came across the idea of what is benevolent patriarchy. So after that, if my father ever was like, this might be a little like, you shouldn't go out because it's too dark or whatever, I would just tell him that, like, you shouldn't be doing that, because that's benevolent patriarchy. It's coming from a good place, but the effect is the same. So don't do that. And I mean, to his credit, he's like smart enough to understand and also change his behavior. So we actually don't have any restrictions. But but if something does happen on the street and it scares you, then how do you process that fear? Also, because something had happened, like the year before I was making this film, a friend of mine had gotten trigger warning, raped, and it had really blown my mind. Like I was very, 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 very anxious and very depressed and quite suicidal. Now that's something that my dad can't really help me with, because I was like, how does one, I mean, that is a question that I was struggling with very much, like, in the sense of, and it's a question that I've struggled with quite a lot over the years, that I don't have a, that I really have a very big problem with the fact that of how a woman is treated in the world. I don't want to be seen as that. Like it's not, I mean, I can't say it's queer. I'm not sure I can say I'm gender queer in the sense that I don't want to be a woman, but I'm very uncomfortable with label and with identification of it. So mostly because of the violence that it is accompanied by. So that's why I was talking to her about it. And also because, like you said very correctly, that when I'm looking at other women that I look up to, or or even feminism theory, or even the theory itself has been so helpful, because those are things that I assume my mother would have told me, but because she's no longer here, I'm trying to learn that from other sources and figure out, like, how do I be as a or exist as a woman here. So yeah.
And thank you for sharing that. First of all, I think it took a lot. It takes lots of guts to share that.
So
And yeah, I mean, I think even we, I mean, we are not even fully grown women yet, and I think we all can completely agree and resonate with whatever you said. Well,
mhm. Thank you.
And your mother was indeed an inspiring figure, I would say. So with this, I would like to ask, like, you mentioned about labor camping, right?
Yeah.
So, what was your first reaction to it? Even you have mentioned in the movie that mother, like, you have called her a star.
Hmm.
So, how did it make difference to your life? Like, did it inspire you in some way? Also, if you could just reflect upon this labor camping, your experience. Also, did you meet those labors, or did you try to go into this more, or did it also inspire you to become an activist in future, right? So
Hmm. I mean, I grew up with it because my dad is still a trade unionist, and we were always in his office, because when we were kids, he was quite overprotective. So we spent a lot of time in the office and a lot of time at the union. And in fact, this one other woman who I called mummy in life is from the same office that I used to work in, and she used to take care of us when my mother was working. So I grew up mother. And so I mean, for me, that was always a part of her life. That was not something that I found out later. I always knew that she was part of the labor campaign, um, and she was always a larger than life figure actually, because people were always talking about how great she was. And like there was uh, one instance when I was like 12 years old, I think, and we went to Jaipur, and this very old man came to pick us up, and he was the president of the auto drivers union in Jaipur. And at that age, I used to be very scared of crossing the road. So I'm standing with him and I'm saying that I'm very scared, and he's just looking at me, and he looked at me and said, "But how can a daughter of Nirmala Ji be scared? You should be nidder like your mother." And so I mean, in that sense, she was always a very what she meant to the labor movement and what she meant to the people who were part of it was something that we were always very aware of. And I'm not sure I can say that it was inspiring, because it was also too much. Because in the sense that, like, I grew up with that expectation of being really cool and badass and being very kind to everybody, being very generous. And I mean, I did put that pressure on myself also quite a bit, that I have to be very nice and I have to be very kind and I cannot possibly be mean to anyone, because that's just going to reflect so badly. Um, but yeah, so I'm not sure if it inspired me. And also, in general, the life of social activists is not very like easy or whatever. So I actually have tried very hard in life to not do that, to run away from it, because I don't want to. I mean, it is genuinely a very difficult life, and victories are so far and few. And and also this whole thing of, like, she became like this cult figure, but I'm very apprehensive about the desire to be that. I mean, the desire to become a leader. Like, she didn't become a leader with the idea of becoming a leader. She was just part, as in, she became part of the labor campaign actually because of my father. Before that, she used to work in the rural healthcare sector, which is where she wrote the book also that is there in the film. And then she joined the labor campaign because my dad was part of it, and it was a national campaign, blah blah blah. And she never really, she didn't care about the power that being so popular brings with it. But if I grew up with the idea that this is the kind of figure my mother was, and I want to do that, like, I did I mean, I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of wanting that, because you shouldn't, I think, you shouldn't want to become a leader. You shouldn't want to be cool and be popular. Those are not the reasons to do this kind of work. You should be doing it because you believe in it, in the work itself. So, and while I do believe in the work, I have to say that that's not my primary interest in life. Like, for me, majorly, the interest in life was always stories, actually, just telling stories and finding different ways of telling stories and connecting with people and finding out why, like, why do people live the lives that they do. Like, I'm not, to be honest, a person who's very interested in creating structural change. Like, structural change needs to happen, but I mean, yeah, that you read out in my bio, I'm more interested in working with children and, you know, thinking about how can education make people more critical and more self-aware and more reflexive about the world, and just better human beings, and just better, like, maybe more empathetic. Like, those are the things I'm more interested in. But yeah, not the kind of work that my parents did or have are doing.
Okay, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I have a question. So like, did this film emerge from the absence of a mother figure who is like still kind of a stranger to you, as you call her so at an instance in the movie? So like,
Or it
yeah.
emerged from the constant presence of her, which you just wanted to preserve in this particular form. Like, is its absence or the constant presence? What is it
It's
that
actually
inspired
both,
you?
because that's kind of what it is, right? Like, she
Yeah.
is present in all the material ways, and she is present in the sense that she is my mother, and also like when we were growing up, because she was such a larger than life figure and people were always saying things about her, and like she was never not there, but she was also not there. So it's actually both that kind of, yeah, I mean, the absence and presence have coexisted always. So it, yeah, in that sense, both. But yeah, I don't know actually, to be honest, what I mean. Yeah, at the time that I was making the film, because I was like really depressed about certain things in life, and I was trying to figure them out. And I kept thinking that, it would have been so nice if she were there to figure it out with. And I was generally just, it was one of the things that I was struggling with. So I decided to make film. And then when I was making the film, it was going to be about this death and grief. But so the one part of the film which is not written in the text because it's supposed to just be there, the film exists as a testament to it, is that um because people talked about her, but because also we were so young when it happened, and it took us a few years to realize what had happened, and that what it meant, because there was so much silence around the idea of death. Like I said, my family kept thinking that, oh, they'll get negatively affected. So there were also so many bubbles of silence around the whole thing, that for the longest time I was very ashamed of missing her at all, because I was like, okay, but it's not that bad, I don't even know her. Because people who lose their parents at a later age, they have memories and they can say that they miss this or miss that, but I can't really say what I miss. So for the longest time I felt very uncomfortable with acknowledging the loss itself, because it was always such a part of my life that it was life itself, and I didn't know how to talk about it, or how to talk about it with anybody. So mostly I would joke about it. I mean, joking I figured out how to do. So like when you tell someone your mother is dead and they're like, you're sorry, and you can just be like, but you didn't kill her, so it's okay. But um so like I figured out how to joke about it, but that's all I would do. I would never really ever tell anybody, but you know what, it would be nice if she were here. So then when I was shooting the film, the idea for the letter also came really late. Like the script was done, it was something else. The shooting was done, it was something else. And then when we were shooting, I was with my friend in the cemetery, and this very close friend of mine was there to help out with the shooting. And we were sitting, and then um, I told her that I want to have a cigarette here. By the way, it's not a good thing. You shouldn't smoke. But anyway, so I wanted to have a cigarette, and she was like, "Oh, you want to have it with UG?" I mean, she called my mother by the name only, so she said, "You want to have it with UG?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I turned around and I said hello to her, but then I stopped. And then I realized that in my head, I have lots of conversations with her, but I'm still so reluctant to have that conversation or just say hello or whatever to her in front of this friend who is a very close friend of mine and who knows all the other very, embarrassing things about me. But then I was kind of also tired of feeling ashamed of it. So I was like, because I don't know, maybe that's also part of grief. I feel that, eventually at some point you're like, people get tired of hearing about it. So people don't want to hear about it. Even if it is a loss which happens at a later age, maybe for the first 2 months, people will be like, yeah, talk to me about it. But if 2 years later you're telling someone about something which happened 2 years ago, and people are like, man, get over it. It happened a long time ago. So I mean, I guess I wanted to sort of like, yeah, so that's why I also made the film, because I realized that essentially what I want to do is have a conversation with her, but yeah, and not be ashamed about it. So that's why.
Okay. So did you feel light, somewhat light after doing this?
Maybe eventually, yes, I guess. Eventually, I'm like, yeah, okay with it. But the whole time that I was making it, I was just like, but I mean, like, the idea that someone else is going to see it was very scary. So for most of the filming, and the mentors really helped with that actually in the course, because and also the form of the film itself really helped, because then the only thing I had to focus on was that, okay, I'm making this movie for a very specific audience, which is just one person. So I don't have to do anything according to what other people are going to think. I just have to make it for her and as honestly as I can. So that's what helped me be very honest. But in terms of the fact that other people are going to be watching it is a bit like weird for me personally. I'm not sure if it made me feel very light in the sense that, I mean, yeah, I've always written to her and I've always spoken to her. And this is just one thing which is part of that. Yeah, I don't know if it made me feel lighter. But it's nice to have. I mean, it didn't make me feel light in terms of the content because that's why I've always had conversations with her. But it made me feel. But yeah, I guess it did help me process the thing in some ways because um, before it, I kept thinking that at some point you do come to an end point of grief, and maybe there is. Like I kept thinking, how do I process this so that it's over? But then when I'm making it, I realized that you don't have to wait for the end point, and maybe just that it is possible to live with feeling also, and that's not so bad. So in that sense, yeah, I guess it helped me some ways.
Okay, so that's all that we had from our side. I think there might be many questions that our participants want to ask. So I'll
Mm.
ask ma'am.
Mm. Okay. Thank you, Supriya, and thank you, Jayashree, so much for that. And for, yeah, that was quite nice to listen to Grace. It was lovely listening to more of it. It was, in fact, very lovely. So I now it's open to everybody. You can raise your hand and we'll unmute you if you'd like to speak, or you can just type it out. Whatever, if it's a comment, if it's an observation, or just or a question, you can type it out in the chat box. Or if you'd like to speak, just please raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Um, while that's happening, yeah, I have a few thoughts, and I'll try to make it less of me. Then I tend to kind of get so, yeah, I tend to kind of take over. I don't realize it, but I just and this is a little bit like after listening to you and then also thinking back on the movie. You mentioned that scene. I can tie up the stray thoughts I have, and when you mentioned about the later part of uh, that leading your mother back to home and telling her the way home. Um, and that's, for one, it's, since it's a letter, it's like a from address. This is from, right? Like, so that's
Mm.
like the later. And also it's interesting that you um, it gives a sense that you are kind of telling her you might have gotten lost somewhere in Delhi, and now this, you must have
Mm.
lost your way, and now this is the way home. Because that losing the way and then you finding her in other women, so there are scenes in
Mm.
the streets and in the metro, and
Mm.
these are all these women that we see, the ones we know, the ones we don't know, the ones we simply watch, and
Mm.
something. So all of that, it was quite interesting. And then within that context, I thought the church scene, because it had the image of Mary and it had the image of the Mother Mary and yeah, the
Mm.
Son. Um, it did seem like an extension of that. It didn't, that's a sense I got. Like, when you, because there was this one. It's not a reference in my head that kept playing from Coetzee's novel
Mm.
called this one, Life and Times of Michael K, where Michael K speaks of
Mm.
tracing a history of mankind through mothers, right? From one mother to
Mm.
the mother to the back to the mother. So,
Mm.
it was instantly that, right? Like, I don't want to glorify motherhood. There are issues with
Mm.
that, that's why I thought, I didn't want to use the word dismissive, but perhaps undermining the intensity of a subject matter like this. Writing to a mother, what does it mean? Because one would rather go quiet, even with the present mothers, like I was just, that's what I felt. I was just sharing my
Mm.
thoughts from based
Mm,
on what you said as well. If
mm.
you want to add to what something.
Yeah. No, I mean, definitely this idea of tracing the line through mother. I mean, that's something that I'm also very interested in and still researching and reading about, and I'm still so interested in that. Um, because this whole, like for me also, when I'm trying to make sense of my life and try to get some meaning from it, and how should I be living it? For me also, that meaning comes from the women in the past, that I'm thinking that, like my grandmother was very smart, but she wasn't allowed to go to school after a certain point, and she didn't have the opportunities I did. And my mother was, she was given more opportunities, and it was a very different world, but she lived her life much more freely, but then she died. So then it's still, like, I look at all the grandmothers and all the mothers and all the ones, the whose stories I know. I mean, there are so many whose stories I don't even know. I mean, I only know the stories from like 3 4 generations, that's it. But I keep thinking about them and thinking that, but I have been given such a gift to be here. And you know that I have been given so many opportunities and I have so many more freedoms, and how am I using them? For me also, like in that sense, the meaning of like, I don't think there is an, for me, I personally believe there is no overarching like big meaning of life or the purpose. But I also derive my purpose from just that much, that I am a woman from a line of women who've had a certain kind of life because of a certain kind of social structure that we live in. And so what can I do with that? What can I do about it? But also, like what you said, I mean, these are also going to be all scattered because you said so many things and they're all differently connected. But yeah, with the church scene, like I'm trying to critique the church, but the reason there is the Mother Mary and Jesus is also because of that. That I'm saying that, but Jesus also got to have a mother. So why did Jesus do this to me? Because I mean, like I said, the parts of the film are different ages that people are having that dialogue. So like that is a thought that I've had. So that was also why there is that picture of Mother Mary with Jesus and the other picture of her holding him. But also because, like you said, Mother Mary is this mother figure. And when I was growing up, she was supposed to be like, my grandmother would always be like, but that you can look up to her as the mother, and she is your mother, and she will take care of you. But she's the mother of all Christians also. Like, she is that figure. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, there were all these various influences that were happening. And also, yeah, like the directions that I'm giving her are from the cemetery, because also, like, I grew up thinking that she's at the cemetery. Like when I was a kid, I thought we've left her there and she's going to come back from there. So like it was, like, now it's fantasy, but at that age it was like what I thought was really going to happen. So that's the rasta she's going to take. So she needs to know the directions. And yeah, I don't know. I was also trying to explore what fantasy is in terms of how you deal with difficult things in life. Because I still do that sometimes. If certain things happen, I'm just very fantastical about them. Like if a friend of mine moves away and I'm very sad, I'll just be like, that's okay. They are not gone. They are still here. I'm just not calling them on the same number. So yeah, I don't know.
Thank you. That was nice. Yeah. So yeah, I'd like to open it up. Is there are there others who'd like to speak or share thoughts? Please go ahead. Yeah, among the panelists as well, or amongst the attendees.
Shashi, you can unmute yourself. I've made you a panelist.
Right, right. I can unmute myself now.
Yeah.
Hello, Grace. Hi, good to see you here. Right.
Hi, Shashi. Hello.
It's really wonderful to have you here, right? And I was listening to, everything that you were saying, and by the way, I really like the documentary, the way you were trying to, come up with this narrative from which you are trying to talk about your mother as if as in what she mean to you or what she would mean to you, right? And then also, just a few couple of minutes ago you said that when you were making the movie, this documentary, you were making it for her and not for the audience, as in, you were not really, sure that, how many people are gonna view it, right? And then of course, all, even if you are making it for your mother, but then there are other audience who will be watching it too. So, my question is that when you were, when you began the shoot, were you already determined that what she would mean to you, or when you were shooting, you were still coming to terms with the idea that, what she would mean to you? So, this is what I was wondering. Could you, reflect on it?
No, when I was shooting, I didn't really know that because I was trying to, like I said, there was a script in place and I was shooting according to that script. But that was happening because there was a timeline, and the timeline was external. The college had given us that timeline that लो अभी script बना लो, अब भेज दो, अब submit कर दो, अब shoot कर दो, और shoot भी इतने days में करना है, इतना ही shooting हो सकता है. All of those were external constraints that had been placed. So, so I was going through the motion mostly, but and so the form of the film also then developed later. But I don't think that what she means to me is something that is still very fixed, because I mean it's different at different ages, right? Like when I was a kid, the thing that I needed from my mother was something very different from what I would need from her now, and what I will need from her 10 years later if I'm still alive. So those are all very, so yeah, I mean what she means to me is something that's not fixed. It's not fixed now. It was not fixed when I was making the film, or before that also. It has never really been fixed.
Right, right. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Grace.
Yeah.
It works the other way too, right? Like, because if your perception of the mother is not fixed, I'm guessing from the, because you
Yeah.
like, for the mother too, you have the
Yeah.
mother becomes, as a mother, one becomes, I'm guessing, I don't know that.
No, no.
As a cat mother, I don't, yeah, I do, I think I do know bits of like transitions that happen
Yeah.
in mothering, perhaps, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Also that. But it's not fixed also because the other person isn't there. But I feel like, no, but like one thing that I wanted to do with the film that I kept talking about was that um, real relationships evolve. And by real, I mean where both parties or whatever parties are alive. Those relationships are always evolving, and that dynamic is very fluid. It's not very fixed. So the way you relate to friends also changes over time, and the way you relate to your family changes over time. And I mean, I'm not sure if I can say that this is what people generally think of motherhood, or in my case, they did because she had passed away. But I think the idea was that the way I relate to my mother is the same, because like she's, I mean, it's very one dimensional, that she's a memory and I have a certain love or whatever for it, and that's it. But I wanted to say that even in this situation, um, where she isn't there, but to me, relate, despite the fact that I don't know her, and despite the fact that I can't know her, that relationship is just as real as any other relationship I have, and it evolves with time, just as any other relationship evolves. Because how I understand her also changes with me. I mean, yeah, like when I was making the film, this was one of the things that I was very like, um, that people should see that. I mean, that was also why I was making the film, I guess. Like when I was talking about how I used to be ashamed of saying that I miss her, I was also just generally like that my relationship with her is not recognized as something that exists and is real. But I wanted to sort of validate it and say that it is real, and it is existent, and it is just as real as any other relationship for me. And that's why it's also not fixed, because it can't be fixed, right? As long as you're there, you're changing in life.
Jayashri has raised her hand. Go ahead, Jayashri. Yeah.
Obi Vijay in one of his novels, The Legends of Kazakh, has mentioned the fact that uh, you try to know about certain things, but since you are human, you cannot know those things, right?
Yeah.
But still you try to know things.
Hmm.
Say you have mentioned this thing here, like you were trying to know your mother, but you are aware about the fact that you really can't know her. So Ovi
Yeah.
Vijayan has represented it in agonized form. So was it also some sort of agony for you as well, or no?
Agony in what sense?
I mean, you were trying to know your mother, but still you know that you really can't know her in real terms, in
Hmm.
real sense.
And if that is agonizing,
Like, is
yeah.
it painful to acknowledge this fact, or you are normal with this?
Mm, I don't know. I think I feel differently about it at different times, but I think, I mean, in terms of like accepting that this is the state of affairs, it's something that I have, I think, done. I mean, yeah, at some point I was very like, I have to know her more, I have to know her more. But at some point I realized that I can't possibly know her completely. And it is true that, I mean, the lack of acceptance of it is the lack of, you're not fully accepted that this has happened and it is final. As long as you're saying that this is not final, is when you're constantly trying to negate it and say that no, no, this hasn't happened, and what are the ways in which it can be reversed. But I think, yeah, I mean, I have accepted that it has happened and that I will never know her completely. But in terms of whether that's painful or not, yeah, I mean, that's different. That changes. Mostly I'm okay with it, I think, in life. Sometimes I feel like, yeah, but I wish things were different, but it is the same kind of wishing that happens with other things. Yeah, hi, Anita.
Okay.
Hi, Grace.
Hi.
Yeah, I think, of the so many screenings that we have done, I can, I was just thinking, and I really think that yours has been the deepest, Grace. I mean, so
Thank
many
you.
filmmakers who have actually been filmmaking for years. Kamla Bai was also something that really touched us profoundly. But I think and as a 28-year-old, somebody who's trying to negotiate grief is something that is, you know,
Mhm.
profound. I just lost my parents a couple of, both my parents together a couple
Oh,
of years back, and I haven't been over it. I just
yeah.
don't get over it. And like we say that the conversations that we make with the people who are dead still is there, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it? It's not that it stops anywhere, right?
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
something that we keep. So, my Facebook post, if anybody actually sees it, okay, see there's water in my eyes.
I'm
So,
sorry.
no, no,
Yeah.
it's not that. But I was just thinking, the way in which you were actually expressing, I can see the pain in your eyes, okay? Maybe others don't see it. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
the thing is that, the way I converse, Grace, I'm just sharing it with you. I keep on writing these long Facebook posts, maybe in the form of poetry and sometimes in the form of, just long stuff about
Hmm.
my parents and not naming them as on my parents.
Hmm.
And I will not, I'll not, I, what I see is there's so many people who communicate with it or feel with it. Okay. Probably many of them kind of engage with it also because they feel the same but not able to express it.
Yeah.
You get it? So I think
Yeah.
Grace, I think it is one of the most touching films. You are such a brilliant, I should say a filmmaker who has engaged in absolutely mind blowing conversation. Grief
Thank
is
you.
something, it really transcends every other form of emotion. It is an
Yeah.
emotion which you will not feel unless you are at it.
Yes.
You can read about it and you can talk about it, but unless you felt it, it's not
Yeah.
grief.
Yeah.
You get it? Hmm?
Yeah.
But I'm sure your mother must be so proud of you.
I hope. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, I'm sure,
Yeah.
So keep doing the good
Yeah.
work, Grace. Okay?
Thank you.
All
Yeah.
thumbs up. All thumbs up.
Thank
Okay?
you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So was Dr. Tagore. I was very moving. Grace, would you like to read out this question and a comment that Sushrut,
Hmm.
a colleague, has shared?
Hmm.
Would you like to read it? Or,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
read it. Yeah,
I can
please.
read it. But also, just I wanted to respond to Anita that I come across this quote, and I've come across it so many times, but, which says that what is grief but a persistence of love, which is basically how I feel about it. That which is also what I was sort of trying to say with the film, that in the culture we live in, um, grief is seen as a negative emotion that one has to get over, and when deaths are like, people die, so you should process it
Move
and
on.
you should move
Yeah,
on.
move on. Yeah, you
Yeah.
never move on.
And
You
not
never move
moving
on.
on is seen as an unhealthy thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was also trying to say that maybe it's healthy, or maybe it's okay to not move on, and maybe it's okay to, and
Yeah.
maybe it's you can learn to live with these emotions without pathologizing them and saying that, "Yeah, this is something I have to get
Yeah.
rid of."
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it's a process, which actually affects people in different ways. Like me and my sister, after my parents passed away, we haven't talked about their death ever.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's a space which remains between us, probably, when I grow even more older. One day,
Yeah.
one day I will sit and, both of us will talk, about the ailment and, how both
Mm.
of them passed away. And my father passed away in grief of my mother.
Yeah.
It is not as if he was suffering from a disease or anything. My father just
Yeah.
passed away because my mother had passed away 2 months back.
Yeah.
So, that emotion, it can only be shared with a sibling or your
Yeah.
own father. You can't share it with anybody else. It's
Yeah.
so powerful an emotion that takes away everything else,
Yeah.
isn't it, Grace?
Yeah.
You know?
In fact, I feel like I'm not even sure if it can be shared with them. Like,
Yeah,
I so personally
yeah,
feel like it's just
sometimes.
you have what
Yeah,
you have.
sometimes it's also encompassing,
Yeah.
right? But the
Yeah.
wonderful thing that you are actually able to accept it and kind of do a documentary on it, which I don't think I would have ever had the courage. In fact, I have not gone back to my parents' house ever since my mother passed away.
Yeah.
It's a locked house now. I don't find the courage to go back, because I know
Yeah.
that emptiness is going to eat me up and get me back to the position I was in on the day of their death.
Yeah.
You get it? But I think it's a wonderful, it's a courageous moment, at least, that you were able to do it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you. But also, to be fair, I've had many years. So, yeah, the comment I'm reading is from Sushrut Bhatia. To be able to make a film on a profound subject like personal loss and talk about it on a public platform is quite a big thing. Kudos to you, Grace. Was it cathartic for you making this film? And since this absence presence dichotomy stays with one who has experienced profound loss, do you think this might be a theme which would be one of the defining aspects in your relationship with filmmaking? Especially since it has got a lot to do with memory, something which is fluid and not definitive. So, about the first question, was it cathartic? I think I have answered. I'm not. I mean, yeah, in some ways it was like it taught me some new things. Isn't because this is something that I keep coming back to every few years and thinking about it. So yeah, making the film was helpful in that sense, and like, because, and it was also helpful in the sense that I could keep some distance from it and be like, okay, but this is a project I'm working on and I'm doing all this research. But also some of those things were going into my head, and I was being able to think through things from a new perspective. So yeah, in that sense, it was cathartic. And yeah, also just being able to say certain things out loud and be done with them. So yeah, in that sense, it was helpful. And whether I think this dichotomy of absence presence, actually for me, I think this whole more than absence presence, memory is something I am very interested in a lot of ways. And also, like, in terms of, now I'm more interested in collective memory and how that shapes our world in certain ways. And um but more than that, I mean, actually, I don't know, more for me, both of those. So there are two things that I'm very, very consistently interested in even now. And one is the idea of motherhood itself and what that means, and what, and not in terms of the social institution of motherhood, but women, and how do women relate to each other, and what does his how do we relate to women in history, and what does mothering someone mean, and what kind of relationship do people have with their mothers. Like, that's something I'm very interested in. um but also, more than presence or absence, yeah, memory is something that I'm very interested in also. um in fact, like, the thing that I want my next project to be about is basically memory itself, and how what is the role that memory plays in the politics of in politics, and shaping politics in a certain way, because there are, and grief as it is processed by collectives and not just individuals. Because, for example, personally, I feel like in our country, as we don't the grief that comes with communal violence is something that we don't process, we don't talk about, we don't commemorate, we don't remember. And, like, for me, like, I feel like that's why we keep also doing things that we keep doing. So in that sense, and how do you use memory to talk about the impact of certain things, and the value of life itself, like, because value of life is also something I feel like is very lacking in our country. So, yeah, I mean, memory is something that, yeah, I'm very interested in working on in the future, and trying to figure out how to do it through art, in various kinds of art, not just film.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. It was a wonderful film.
Mm.
And the reason I wrote this question was because I wasn't able to verbally articulate it because it's a
Yeah,
difficult thing.
yeah,
And by cathartic, you're absolutely right. We have this general sense that when we say cathartic, it is going to you know not as a kind of a permanent sort of
yeah,
catharsis, just for the moment of that moment and finding something new, and probably finding ways to say things you might not have been able to in words or in
mm,
conversation through another medium.
yeah,
And since that lingers on, and that's why I thought that perhaps memory,
mm,
which would trigger again certain kind of feelings of absence, or a kind of a presence, and uh, would always becomes kind of a part of your own life, how
mm,
you start looking at certain kinds of things. uh, and it's a since you said that you would be interested in talking about collective grief, collective trauma, and communal violence, etc. I
mm,
think that's again a very very powerful subject, and I think a subject which people wouldn't talk about that much, uh, given a lot of things. So yeah, more strength to you, and thank you so
thank
much.
you, thank you.
Thank you, Sushrut. Thank you, Grace. Again, are there more questions, or are we nearing the end of this very nice conversation? It's lovely. Thank you, Grace. I think it's your movie, and you kind of.
it
Right.
was it was very interesting for me also. Thank you. You guys asked very nice questions that made me think about a lot of things.
No, this was lovely. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah. So, are there more? Should we? What do you say, Dr. Tagore? Do we move on, or should we?
Are there more people who want to ask questions or
I don't
discuss?
see.
Shama?
I don't see anyone raising hands. Um,
Okay.
yeah. Also, Grace, in case you missed it, uh, your friend, I think, had posted something earlier from MH, just to kind of
Yeah, she's my friend. The
your
friend.
friend.
Oh, yeah, it's we're making a full circle here. The friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, Namgyal, right? It's
Yeah,
Namgyal.
Namge. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
hi.
yeah.
Wait,
She's
where did
not
she
here,
post
but
it?
we have committed here. Yeah.
Yeah,
I will send you the film, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Lovely. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you so much, Grace. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
Yeah. All the very best. You keep
Can I
doing
take a
like this.
screenshot?
Yeah.
I'm just remember.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yes. I'm going to take a screenshot. People just
Yeah.
smile.
Yeah.
And now everyone's turning their cameras on. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi.
And I don't know how to do this. Wait.
We also have one camera person, like
Yeah,
some.
we
Did
can
it.
send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. Love.
And thank you. I had such a good time. It was a really
Yeah.
nice discussion to be part of.
Lovely. So, would you, Dolka, would you like to do a formal vote of thanks so we
Yeah,
can
yeah. Thank
get
you so
honest
much,
privacy?
Grace, for today. I think we are very grateful to you in a way that we like throughout these days we have been touching upon like a lot of different issues, and today was another one which was very profound in a way. And but I really was very inspired in a way the way you articulate yourself, which is not very easy to do. I think which a lot of young people are still in the process of finding themselves, and the difficult part is sometimes to articulate how you feel, and which I really felt like you really are good at it, like that's something very exciting for me. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
thank you so much. I think our students would have found it very inspiring and profound as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Divya, also, and everyone, the panelists, everyone in WDC, and otherwise also. Lovely.
Thank you for including us in this journey of discussion, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
guys, thank you the students. Yeah, like
Yeah.
kind of missed out on that, but our students have been very good at carrying
Yeah.
out questions, everything. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. I had a lovely time. Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye. Best of luck for the.
Just
We have
one
one
more.
more
Yeah.
screening left, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Best of luck.
Would you like, if you like to join, you can. It's at 5. We start at 5.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Tomorrow, I
Yeah.
have work over the
It's
weekend.
okay.
So
Yeah, yeah. We're all
it's sad. But
actually.
yeah.
Yeah. Good luck
Bye.
with everything.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Bye
Thanks.
Thank
bye.
Bye. Bye.
You leave then?
Or yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, we can leave. Tomorrow I'll call for a meeting, for the Women's Day celebration, which needs to be done. I've already got a reminder from the office. So maybe tomorrow, after we have finished the workshop, I mean the film screening, then we'll all stay back for the meeting, which will take around 5 minutes. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah, sure. Okay.
ठीक है ना? ऐसे कर लेते हैं, ठीक है? So
Thank
good work, and I think it really touched me, in very many ways, very many ways. ठीक है? So good work, good Dolkar and Shama. Very good choice of movies. Today I went into the staff room. At least 5-6 people came to tell me. Okay, so I think that actually shows that we are giving a good direction to new kind of work that can actually be done by other people also. So good work. Let's meet tomorrow then, last day.
Okay. Okay, fine. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.